सर बहुत बहुत स्वागत करती हूँ फिर से आपका उद्यमिता
Thank you again.
हेल्पलाइन
Thank
में।
you.
आज का जो हमारा टॉपिक है रिकवरी ऑफ डिलेड पेमेंट टू एमएसएमई। तो सर बहुत ज्यादा हमारी जो पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं हमारे बहुत ज्यादा एक्साइटेड लग रहे हैं आज के इस वेबिनार के लिए। तो हम स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं सर?
Sure, no problem.
ओके सर, इट्स अप टू यू सर।
Okay, I'll start now. So I'll first of all thank you for the kind introduction, Richa, and I thank you to all the attendees for joining in for the webinar today. I hope I'll able to add some value after the end of this webinar. Welcome to the webinar today. So let's begin our webinar. The agendas for the discussions in today's webinar would be multitudes, and we'll be discussing the definition of MSMEs under Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Development Act 2006. So what are the expression micro, small and medium enterprises mean? How are they defined under the MSME Act? So, and again, the qualifying conditions to apply for registration under MSMED Act. So what enterprises can apply for registration, and where do they should apply for registrations, and what all registrations they can get as an enterprise, whether they are entitled to receive micro registration, small registration, or medium enterprises registration, which depends on two parameters. We'll discuss about that also. The challenges and issues pertaining to delayed, default, stuck payments from buyers. So there are many issues. There are multitude of reasons because why these delayed payments and defaulted payments, the situations like this arise in the first place. So what are the challenges and issues which the company faces when these issues arises? So we'll discuss that, and we'll discuss the important provisions under MSMED Act for the benefit of MSMEs. So when we are saying the MSMED Act, what are the beneficial provisions for MSME? I would like to add that the whole enactment, the MSMED Act, is drawn out by the legislature by considering the MSMEs in center stage. So all the enactment, all the provisions which are made in the MSMED Act revolves around the benefit, the facilitation, promotion, and development of MSMEs. So the whole enactment is for the MSMEs. Hence, the MSME contribute the majority of the chunk in our economy, in the country's economy. I guess it is the most it takes up the most percentage of the economy, what every other industries contribute into the country's economy. I guess the micro, small and medium enterprises is a majority contributor, and it is surprising to know that a majority of these MSMEs are still unorganized in the sense that their businesses are not streamlined as per the benefits and as per the developments which are intended by enacting this act. And that is the reason why still a lot of issues of delayed payments persist, and the government has to time and again step into these issues, and they have to warn the industries who are making the delayed payments, who are not making payments on timely basis to the micro, small and medium enterprises. But we'll discuss that how without any interference from government or without any interference from any statutory body, we can streamline our processes in an effective manner, so that these issues when happen, we are able to tackle it in our own way, and we do not need any assistance from any statutory government. So we have to adopt certain methods. We have to change our way of conducting businesses, and we'll discuss that how it can be done. So next thing, the solutions and way forward to resolve the issues of delayed payments. So when the issues of delayed payments have already arisen, so when the delayed payments are stuck, you are not able to realize the payments. So what are the way forwards? What is the solution after that? So how can you go for recovery? How can you make the other party to pay your amount? How can you realize the amount in an effective manner without losing too much on your principal amount? So we'll discuss this issue also. And next, we'll move on to preventive measures to avoid delayed payments that can be adopted internally. So as I stated just right now, that there are certain things which we can internally adopt in our way of conducting businesses, in our way of doing businesses. So our processes can be streamlined, our processes can be one. So let's say that we are meticulous enough, and we are careful enough to draw a contract or to draw a transaction document before entering into a contract to one party, but we are not entering into a contract in a transaction for the other party, let's say because the other party has a good relationship with us. So these are things which right now doesn't seem like it creates much problem, but at a later stage we never know. Circumstances can be endless. So I'll say that one, there is a streamlining process that we have to adopt internally, for not for a bunch of clients of ours, but for everyone with whom we deal. So just a second, yeah, sure. So now coming next, so resolution mechanisms, alternate dispute resolutions, online dispute resolutions. So what are the resolution mechanisms? How we can resolve the issues of delayed payment, defaulted payments, stuck payments? There are a lot of ways in which we can resolve these issues, and alternate dispute resolution is one of them. And a facet of alternate dispute resolution is online dispute resolution. Alternate dispute resolution, in its expression, also includes it includes mediation, conciliation, arbitration, anything. So the alternate dispute resolution, so anything which is done alternatively without resorting to litigation is almost alternate dispute resolution. So even if we mutually decide to discuss and amicably settle the issue, it is also amicable alternate dispute resolution in a way. And online dispute resolution is a way in which a lot of companies have come and they have provided a streamlined platform to organize these arbitration and conciliation, which anyway happens through MSEFC or for small businesses. So they have come out with their platform, they have come out with their institutional framework by which they organize these dispute resolutions on their online platform, and it has resulted in a lot of effective results also. So whenever any small businesses are trying to avoid the hassle of going again and again to MSEFC or to any conciliator or arbitrator for that matter for resolving their disputes. So it might happen that the MSME has entered a lot of disputes at the same time. So it might happen that going physically to conciliator, arbitrator might end up draining up a lot of your resources and might engage a lot of your workforces also at one point of time. So online dispute resolutions comes as a boon in that peculiar circumstances, and it is also cost effective. It has turned out to be cost effective a lot, because you don't have to give your physical appearance now and then. You can just sit back at your home and conveniently do all the processes that are required under the act, which you have done it anyway by going physically to the arbitrator or conciliator. So it is nothing, it is just an online way of doing it. And so I thought that this should be included, so that you all know that there exists platform, online dispute resolution way, in which you can resolve your disputes online. You don't have to, even if you do not resort to online dispute resolution platforms, in the most cases the conciliation and arbitration are party centric. So the arbitrator and conciliator generally agrees to parties' request that they do not want to make their physical appearance and they want to appear through online way. But to making sure that you do not have to go at all is only in the online dispute resolution, because it is online. It is inherently online. So there exists no scope whether you have to go and you have to mark your appearance before the conciliator or arbitrator for that matter. So coming to the next point, which is litigation. Provisions under various laws intended for recovery of payments or ways in which delayed payments can be recovered. So I've talked about alternate dispute resolutions, but alternate dispute resolutions are not always very much successful, and they end up in majority of the cases in litigation. So when it comes to litigation, there are various provisions in laws, and it is circumstances centric. So it has to be decided accordingly whether in a given set of circumstance you should go for litigation or you should go for alternate dispute resolution, whether you should resort to MSME or whether you should resort to summary suits in civil procedure code, or for that matter IBC. So it has to be decided on circumstances to circumstances basis. And what is your quantum of amount, what is the status of the other company, the opposite company. All of these things becomes a factor which is relevant to decide whether which resort to pick and choose from. So because there are many resort which you can adopt for recovering your payments. So going forward, the last thing is the things to keep in mind while doing businesses for effective management, tips and suggestions. So these are some tips and suggestions which we have tried to provide basing on our commercial wisdom and experience that we have garnered throughout the years, resolving these disputes and managing these disputes on behalf of MSMEs. So going forward, I'll just move to the next slide now. So yeah, the conditions precedent to be registered as MSME under MSME Act, amended by the notification date is 26/6/2020. So as per the first recent notification, so what categories include micro, small, and medium enterprises? So what are enterprises for that matter? So enterprises are any commercial entities. So the courts have been very clear while deciding upon the term what is enterprise. So the courts have been clear that the enterprise in its expression, what is used under the MSME, is very open-ended and wide in its expression. So it includes manufacturers and service providers both in one category. So whether you are a manufacturer or you are just providing services to any buyer, or let's say any vendor, then you fall under the first category. You are eligible enough to get yourself registered into micro, small, and medium enterprises, or any one of them. And the second category, which was included recently, which is the trader of goods. So now the trader of goods has been recently included through amendment, and it has made the expression more wide and open-ended. So it would be now more liberally interpreted. So the traders of good, when we say that traders of goods are also included, it also includes the enterprises which are placed at anywhere in the supply chain. So let's say that you are trading the goods, you're receiving it from a manufacturer, you are trading it to the retailer, factoring a profit to yourself in between. So you become a trader. Neither you are providing any services, nor that you are manufacturing any goods. You are just, what you are doing is receiving the goods directly from manufacturers and then distributing it to the retailers after taking a profit to yourself, after taking a small amount of profit or factoring a profit for yourself. So you become a trader. So now trader are also included in this expression. So now the trader at any supply chain, whether you are situated at any stages of supply chain, you would be included in the definition or the eligibility criteria for getting yourself registered under the micro, small, and medium enterprises. So the two parameter basis in which the classification is made between MSMEs are investment made in their enterprises, plant, machinery, and equipments, and also the turnover. So how do we decide that what enterprises falls into micro, small, or medium? So it is decided upon two parameters. So firstly, you have to be an enterprise. You have to either manufacture a good, or you have to provide services, or you have to just simply be a trader of goods. So that makes you eligible or qualified enough to make a registration for micro, small, and medium enterprises. Now, in which class you will make the registration for yourself, whether in micro, medium, or small. So it depends on the two parameters that are given here. The first parameter is investment made in the plant and machinery, and the other parameter is turnover from the enterprise. So the parameters basis in which the classification is made is the investment. So the investment made in your business, the plant and machinery and equipments are taken into consideration. So it has to be up to 1 crore. So if your investment in the plant, machinery, and equipments are till the tune of 1 crore, then the investment part of it and the turnover part of it does not exceed 5 crores, then you are eligible to get yourself registered into the micro category of micro, small, and medium enterprises. Now, when I say the investment made in the plant and machinery, so it does not include the intangible assets like the fittings, furnitures, and the land. So all these factorings would not be taken into consideration, but the thing which would be taken into consideration as investment would be the investment made in plant, machinery, and equipment, or the workforce, or things like that. So the investment which has been made in the preceding year in your businesses are taken into are taken for the consideration for deciding whether you are eligible enough to make the application under any of these categories separately. So as I said, that being a micro, for getting a micro registration, your investment in plant and machinery should not exceed 1 crore. So it is, when it says it should not exceed 1 crore, then there it is an upper limit which is made. It does not say that it has to range somewhere between 1 to 5 crores. Now, if that was the case, the minimum criteria would be that your investment has to be 1 crore, but it is not like that. It is very open-ended. So when it says that it till 1 crore, you are, if the investment is till 1 crore rupees, you can get yourself registered in the investment category, which is less than 1 crore, and the turnover, which is less than 5 crore, as a micro, small, and medium enterprises. So when it says that less than 1 crore, so it also includes the investments for an amount, let's say 2,000 rupees or 10,000 rupees or 15,000 rupees or 20,000 rupees, then also you're eligible. So it does not have any lower limit. It only has an upper limit. So for the micro enterprises, if your investment does not exceed 1 crore rupees and your turnover does not exceed 5 crore rupees, then you can get yourself registered in the micro category. For medium category, you have to have the investment from 1 crore rupees to 5 crore rupees. Just a second, yeah. So this is the table. So investment made in enterprises equal to or less than 1 crore, or turnover generated annually 5 crore or less than 5 crore, are fall under micro enterprises. The enterprises which are meeting the both criteria are to be registered under the micro enterprises. For small enterprises, the investment made in enterprises has to range between 1 crore to 10 crore, and the turnover has to range between 5 crore to 50 crores. So if these two criteria are met, then you qualify from micro enterprises to a small enterprises. And lastly is the medium enterprises. That for the enterprises whose investment ranges from 10 crores from to 200 crores and their turnover generated annually ranges from 50 crores to 50 crores, then it is eligible enough to get registered into the medium enterprises. So both the parameters and investment and turnover has to be met for an enterprise to qualify as either micro, small, or medium enterprises, basis the parameters laid out here in below. So we have discussed the parameters laid out here in below, that both the parameters have to be met simultaneously. It cannot be so that one parameter is meeting and the other is not. So it cannot be done. So both the parameters has to be met for the registration to be downgraded or to be upgraded. When I say downgraded or to be upgraded, let's say that if you're a small enterprises and your investment the preceding year decreases from 10 crores to 8 crores, and let's say your investment decreases from 1 crore, because it is already in range 1 to 10 crores is for small enterprises. So if it decreases from 1 crore, or the turnover decreases from 50 crores or 5 crores, then you'll be downgraded to the micro enterprises. So not in the same year, the next year, the next succeeding financial year, you would be downgraded. Or if that you have surpass the upper limit, let's say being a small enterprises, your investment has now crossed 10 crore rupees, it has become 15 crores, and your turnover generated annually has crossed 50 crores, it has become, let's say, 75 crores, then in the succeeding financial year, you would be upgraded to medium enterprises. So that is how it is done. Both the parameters has to be met simultaneously for the registration to be downgraded or upgraded. and it has to be the investment and turnover part, the parameters part has to be taken into consideration for the preceding year, for the ITR that you have filed. So the ITR returns are taken into consideration to compute the investment made in plant and machinery and the turnover generated by the company. So I guess that it's clear by far now. I hope that I am clear and there is no confusion by far. So let's moving to the next slide. We will discuss the reason for the delayed payments and consequential effects on MSMEs. So the reasons for delayed payments are a lot. The multitudes of reasons exists for the issues of delayed payments, that why the MSMEs are facing these issues and why it is still prevalent in India and it still persists. And the government has to time and again step for facilitating and promoting the MSMEs and to cure the defect of cure the issues of delayed payments. They have to time and again and step and warn the industries who are not making timely payments to make the timely payments to the MSMEs, because a lot of MSMEs contribute a large amount of percentage to our economy, and the credit system and everything fails. It has a cascading effect. Whenever there is delayed payment, the MSME suffers, a lot of employment suffers, the credit line suffers. So it has a cascading and dominoes effect. So the delayed payment issues are such that it hampers your business in a very aversive manner. So there are a lot of reasons for that, and we'll discuss the same. So the first is not documenting or recording of the transactions. So not documenting or recording of the transactions, delivery of goods, materials, or performance of services without any work purchase orders, not recording terms and conditions in an agreement, not adept with quick turnarounds for reserving rights, etc. So not documenting or recording of the transactions. So this is the very prevalent issue, and it is one of the major issues why the problem at the very instant gets very dicey. So if you're entering into a transaction without any evidence of that transaction existing in any other manner, then it is very difficult for us to go and to prove that transaction, that it actually happens and that it actually happened and we have suffered the delayed payment. So let's say if we have no documents for a transaction, then we cannot approach the court saying that we have entered into this transaction with this party and we supplied our goods and services, but we did not receive any payments, because there exists no documents to show that this agreement, this understanding was agreed between the parties. So it is the first and the foremost major reason why the delayed payment issues still persist, because a lot of MSMEs, in order to retain clients or in order to retain businesses, they do not enter into documentation, or they do not document their transactions. Many a times they do not want the clients to go elsewhere where the same issue does not happen, where they can get the transaction without any documentation. But believe me that there always be competitors who would always, let's say, won't require the transaction documents, whereas you would require the transaction documents. So it might happen that the clients would prefer the other party, which is not requiring any transaction documents, but the other party would suffer. Always remember that whenever any issues such as delayed payment happens, or any deficiency of services happens, or any dispute happens between the party, it is the other party who will suffer. So now it seems very feasible and it seems convenient to retain the client for the time being, but whenever any dispute occurs, you would the impediments of not having a documentation, a proper documentations, can be so huge that the whole transaction fails, or you won't be able to prove the transaction, you won't be able to realize the amount which are delayed to the other party. So the delivery of goods, materials, or performance of services without any work purchase order. So there are many ways in which we can document the transaction. what we can do is we can form an agreement. When we form an agreement, that let's say that we have to supply 100 apples per month to any other party. Let's say A has to apply 100 apples to B in every month. So there has to be a contract in place. So there has to be a contract in place recording all the transactions, all the understanding which is agreed between the parties. So what the qualities of the apples which the other party expects, what are what are the specific requirements of apple, whether they require Himachal apples, whether they require Kashmiri apples. So it has to be recorded in a very clear and unequivocal terms. So that it cannot be left for interpretations, or it cannot be left to the arbitrator to bridge the gap and to speculate what the parties intended at that point of time. So you have to be clear and concise in your agreement, so that there exists no scope for anyone, any neutral party, to abridge any gap, because it is so clear from the instant. It is so very clear that there is no scope for applying your own interpretation. So we have to record everything crystal clear. All the terms and conditions have to be recorded in the agreements. All the things that you can imagine of that that happen in the transaction. So the transactions can be of many things. So like I saw that in the chat, that the many of the attendees are dealing in fashion and lifestyle, and some are dealing in industrial chemicals. So you have to draw your agreements basing on the transaction you're entering into. Now you cannot enter into a transaction with a fashionable and lifestyle agreement, and you cannot use the same agreement for supplying industrial chemicals. So that is one point you'll have to always take care of, because all the transactions are very much specific in their own ways. So all the transaction, let's say if we are if you're delivering industrial chemicals, then we have to like say that what the chemicals you would require, what all the chemicals, what are the significance of the chemical, how strong the chemical should be, is there any quality specifications for that chemical, how it should be transported, and all of these things should be kept in mind, because all these things might be which is specific for industry chemical distribution, which might not be specific to the fashion and lifestyle. So if we are entering into a transaction for, let's say, delivering of goods, we cannot use the same agreements for providing the services if we are providing any services to the other party. So the agreements have to be specific for the transactions, and if we have not made agreements, then we have to at least come out with the work order or purchase order for that particular transaction which we are making, or which we are entering into the party, which we are entering with the party, the opposite party. So let's say what should be done, that you should draw an agreement first, and basing on that agreement, you continuously draw work orders. So the work orders and all the transaction, the purchase orders, are lastly governed by the parent agreement which you have drawn earlier, and it is drawn, it is being executed once, but you keep on drawing the work order specific, basing on the needs of the specific needs of the party. So the work orders has to be raised basing on the agreements. If we have not made agreements for the transaction, at least what we should do is to issue work or purchase orders for every transactions, and the work and purchase orders for that transaction should include at least a lot of clauses, because we do not have an agreement, we do not have a parent agreement. So the work order has to be drawn out like an agreement. So it has to be kept in mind. And going further, not recording terms and conditions in an agreement. So as I stated, that not recording terms and conditions in an agreement is very much uh, aversive to the businesses, and because the neutral party has to see a document whether the both parties have agreed to an understanding. So if there is no understanding to be found out in an agreement, then it is solely based on the arbitrator, and it cannot be said that it it cannot be interpreted in its own way, that if there exists no termination clause, if there exists no notice clause, then we cannot say that the notice period should have been given. Now we can argue it, of course, and basing on the current and the normal course of businesses, many a times it could be granted also, the notice period, but it is a contentious issue at the end of the day. So when the agreements, when the terms and conditions are not agreed, or not crystallized in an effective manner, then it does not record the particular understanding of the parties, and the arbitrator cannot come to your rescue if you are defaulted in that particular clause, because that particular clause does not exist in your agreement. So you have to be very much meticulous and careful about all the terms and conditions, what all terms and conditions you have to incorporate in your agreement, and what terms and conditions you think that would be beneficial for you in the upcoming transactions. So it has to be drawn considering your benefit in the center stage, but it has to be also drawn by not surpassing the general accepted principles of contracts and constitution. So going further, not adept with quick turnarounds for reserving rights. So now when we saying not now not sorry now when we say that we are not adept with quick turnarounds for reserving rights, we mean that we always have to be conversant, we do not have to show that we are sleeping over our rights. So we have to be quick in getting turnarounds to reserve our rights. So let's say that your payments is being delayed. Now it's already been 20 days, and let's say your payment term was for 30 days. Now you send a mail after 20 days that there only exists 10 days remaining in the payment terms, and after the expiry of this 10 days, the payment terms becomes due. And if you do not pay the payment in between the payment term, or till the payment term expires, then you would be liable to pay the interest as per the MSME Act. So we have to reserve our rights. So if we have faced losses, so let's say because of deficiency, or let's say because of the opposite party not meeting its obligations as agreed in the contract, then we always have to be quick with the turnarounds to say that we are facing the losses. If your machinery is idle, if your workforce is idle, then you have to write that your workforce is idle at this point of time, and it should have been engaged in a work, and now you are not being engaged in a work, so you have to pay for the idlement of the workforce and the machinery. So you have to reserve your rights. So any losses that you are suffering, or anything that you want to claim in going forward from the opposite party, you have to quick with your turnarounds. You have to say out loud that these are your claims, and these are the intimations that you have provided to the other party, so that the other party doesn't come tomorrow and say that you never told him about all of this, and you did not ever reserve your rights of doing so, of claiming damages or etc. Extended credit period, continuing with the transaction even after the delayed payment issues with the hope of retaining buyer client. So now it is again a very rampant issue. I've seen it firsthand in a lot of MSMEs doing it. A lot of MSMEs doing it. Extended credit period. Now a lot of MSME give extended credit periods to a lot of large corporates. A large corporates having bargaining power, better bargaining power than the MSMEs, generally tend to delay their payments. And the MSMEs, just to retain the clients, because anyway they are getting the amount, not on timely basis, but they are getting the amount. They are realizing the amount. So what they do is they extend the credit period. So let's say that do not they do not ask for the interest for, let's say, the delayed payments even after the 45 days have been passed, just because they want to retain the clients, just because they do not want to go for the interest, and they do not want to share the relationship of the business that exists between them. So the extended credit period, often when it becomes it computes to become a huge amount. So let's say that you never reserved your right for, let's say, 1 year or 2 year, and you were just raising bills in the hope that you'll get the payment at one shot, because the other company is a good corporate and it has never defaulted in its payment. However, it has defaulted in timely payments, but it ends up making payment. But a lot of times I've seen when it computes to be a larger amount, then the default occurs. So let's say that it has become 5 crores or 6 crores of rupees, and you did not ever reserve your right of claiming damages or claiming interest, or you have never told them that the interest is applicable or so, and you're just continuing with providing them the goods and services without even receiving or realizing the money, just to retain the clients. So these extended credit period are often an impediment when the other party defaults in the payment. So the extended credit period has to be used very cautiously by the micro, small, and medium enterprises. However, I'm not saying that to retain a client you do not have to give extended credit period at all, because it is more of a commercial wisdom. It is more of how the particular MSME is dealing or going on with its business, or how the relationship of that MSME is with the other party. So it also depends on other factors. I'm not saying that it is always wrong, but extended credit period has to be really used cautiously, and it has not to continue for an inordinate period of time. So let's say that you only give extended credit period for 6 months. After 6 months, you just stop all the services and goods till you receive any payments for the amounts which are dues for that past 6 months. So there has to be a point where you have to stop. You have to say that, look, no, I'm not providing the services or goods any further down the line without receiving the payments for the previous goods and services. So it has to be done at one point of time, and you have to decide at which point of time you want to exercise this right. And I would advise you to not have this extended credit period for so long. I would advise generally to keep it for 6 months, because 6 months is relatively a good period of time for any corporate to clear any MSMEs dues, or to clear any payments. So this has to be kept in mind, that extended credit period has to be used cautiously, and not as liberally as it is being used by the MSMEs currently. So coming to the next point, challenges faced due to competition in relevant market, industry-specific challenges such as disrupted availability of raw materials, etc. Competitive rates with minimal margins of profit. So now this is very interesting one. The challenges faced due to competition in relevant market. So you cannot avoid this. So these are the challenges which, by the virtue of being an enterprise, you face, because you cannot stop any enterprise from getting into the same business as yours, and it is not allowed to do so as per the constitution. So let's say if you are operating a shop of a restaurant, to say, on the other side of the road, and your competitor just comes up tomorrow and opens a restaurant on the other side of the road, you cannot virtually or you cannot practically stop them from doing so. So what you can do for that competitiveness to always be in your favor, so and what you can do to make your services more feasible in this era of competitiveness. So the only thing that I've come as a recourse to this is to have a pool of everything: a pool of customers, a pool of raw materials, a pool of vendors from where you get your raw materials, a pool of workforce from where you get your workforce from. So all of these, when you have options, so options are one of the most primary facets of fair competition. So whenever you have options enough at your hand, you'll always be having fair competition in the market. So when you have an option to go to pick and choose customers, so like, say, when a customer is bargaining and doesn't want to pay X amount for any good that you are providing him, and you have 3 or 4 customers like him, and some of the customers are ready to buy the same good on the amount X. So you have the customers and you have the available recourse. So to maintain the competitiveness of your business. So when I say that the relevant market, when you're operating in a relevant market, I mean to say that if you're operating in Delhi, the relevant market for you would be in and around Delhi. If we are to extend it very much, then it might go to the states adjoining Delhi, but it wouldn't go to the relevant market. For an enterprise operating in Delhi would not be the market which is in South India. So having a digital presence, for having a digital advertisement, or having a digital pool which ranges all over the country, gives you an upper hand to maintain the competitiveness and to maintain the price, to maintain the bargaining power in your field. So you do not have to conveniently dilute your terms, or dilute your prices, or dilute your conditions on the basis, on the needs of the customers or the vendors. But now that you have a lot of customers and vendors, you can dictate the terms. So it is just relating to what amount of customers you have, how many pools that you have, how many customers, how many vendors that you have. And all of these are very much important, because industry specific challenges are many, such as disrupted availability of raw materials. So in COVID, we have seen that many of the raw materials were disrupted, and a lot of businesses had to shut down because they were not getting workforces. All of the workforces were not present in a lot of places. A lot of raw materials were not present. So all of these things can be ignored, or can be bypassed, if we just be careful of these raw materials, of this availability of raw materials, or where do we get these raw materials from, and where do we get the workforces from. So if we have not one sources but several other sources, then we can dictate the terms as per our convenience, and as much option we have, the competition would be as much fair. So this has to be also kept in mind. And coming to that, I'll also add that the RBI has recently introduced a trades portal, which is also known as receivables discounting system portal. So what is that? It is a very interesting thing to understand that what is trades portal. That all the MSMEs can go and register themselves on a trades portal. Now, what is trades portal? The trades portal is where you discount on the receivables of the trade, where you factor a discount. So what situation, what processes the trades portal intends to streamline for the MSMEs. So what it does is that the MSMEs are the government knows that the credit facilities are very much restrained for the MSMEs. They do not have quick realization of money. So for quick realization of money to MSMEs, which is for after raising the invoices in 72 hours, you get your money for the invoices that you have raised. So what you do is, whenever you are entering into a transaction with, let's say, PSU, which are government instrumentalities, also public sector undertakings, or large corporations who are also registered in trades portal. So to use trades portal, your buyer also has to be registered under trades portal. So this has to be kept in mind, that you make yourself registered under the trades portal. Being an MSME, your buyer also has to be registered under the trades portal to take the benefit of the trades portal. So what you do, you supply the goods and services, and you raise an invoice. So what you do is that you upload that invoice on the trades portal. Now, when you upload that invoice onto the trades portal, the buyer gets the intimation that your supplier has uploaded this much of invoice against the services or the goods which it has provided to you. Now the buyer approves that invoice, that yes, that invoice is very good to go, and I have demanded this goods and services, and this is the correct invoice. I acknowledge that invoice is good. Now, when the invoice is verified by the buyer to whom you raise the invoice, then a lot of financiers are present. in the TREDS portal. Now, what they do is they bid on their invoice. A lot of financiers would buy the whole invoice from you. So let's say that they would say that on 10% of discount, I would buy your invoice. So I would give you the payment of the invoice in 72 hours, but I'll receive a 10% of discount. So if you, let's say, if you uploaded an invoice of 1 lakh rupees and 5 financiers were there in the TRED portals, 5 of them bid that I am taking 5% of discount, I am taking 10% of discount, I am taking 15% of discount, I am taking 20% of discount. Now, it is upon the MSM to choose, to pick and choose that what discount or what factoring would they prefer. Now, if they agree to the 5% of discount, which one of the financier has agreed to in its bid, then let's say that he would purchase your invoice of 1 lakh rupees in 95,000 rupees. And the amount that the 95,000 rupees against your 1 lakh invoice would be realized, would be made available to you in the 72 hours, T plus 2, which is the time limit. So the day when it was, the whole process were done, and after 2 days. So 72 hours from the day the process starts. 72 hours from the day when the process starts, you'll get your money on the discounted part. So after factoring the discount, the financier would get the discount of 5,000 rupees on the invoice, and you will get the 95,000 in the 72 hours. And after the 45 days, what happens is that the payment term is already there in the TREDS portal. The 45 days after, the main buyer of your invoice would be intimated of its payment obligation of 1 lakh rupees, and after 45 days he has to pay the financier the 1 lakh rupees. So now every party, it's a win-win situation for everyone, right? So like, you got your money in 72 hours, the buyer got the 45 days payment terms anyhow. It got the 45 days term to enjoy, to make payments, and the financier also got the factoring discount. So all of the parties get a win-win situation here. So the TREDS portal in this way is very much beneficial. We'll be discussing TREDS portal in a bit detailed also, in a bit detailed manner after some time. Now let's go to the other point. So no bargaining power with buyers to negotiate terms accordingly, market share reductions, alternative materials or services against that of MSMEs, etc. So no bargaining power. As I stated earlier, that whenever we are entering into a contract with PSU, or let's say large corporates, then they have their boilerplate contracts. So whenever you go to an insurance company and you get an insurance, you do not get to dictate the terms of the insurance agreement, right? Because they are boilerplate contracts which are made and drawn by the one party only, and often the terms are onerous and are inclined towards one party. Mostly it is inclined towards the party who have drawn the contract, for who has drawn the contract. And so this bargaining power has to be in parity. So there is this provision under law which is said contra preferentum. So contra preferentum is nothing, and it is a principle in law which is recognized that whenever there is boilerplate contracts, or whenever there is onerous conditions in the contract, when the other parties didn't get opportunity to bargain the terms and conditions, because one party had the upper hand in the bargaining powers. So the to dictate the terms, to negotiate the terms becomes hard. So what the courts have decided, that whenever there exists a interpretational issue on the clauses, whenever there are clauses in which interpretational issues arises between the parties, and if the contract is boilerplate contract where the other party did not get enough bargaining power to dictate the negotiations or terms, then the interpretations which are to be accorded to that clauses are to be favoring to the opposite party who has not drawn the contract. So when I'm saying that whenever there exists an interpretational issue, so let's say a clause is there in a boilerplate contract where it says that the parties where two interpretations are possible, or where, let's say, more than two interpretations are possible, and all of them are feasible interpretations, and the neutral party does not know which interpretation has to be accorded to, then the principles of contra preferendum specifically states that the interpretation which are beneficial to the party who did not get the opportunity to dictate or to negotiate the terms, so the interpretation favorable to that party would be accorded. So that is the one part where such contracts has to be are interpreted on the opposite party's favor, basing on the opposite party's favor. So the contra preferendum issue has to be kept in mind. So the bargaining power, it is not like always that the onerous conditions in the contract has to be followed in spirit, in letter and spirit, because there exist interpretational issues, and when there exist interpretational issues, the interpretational issues which are favorable for the party who were not able to bargain it effectively would be accorded to. So this is one beneficial point for not being able to bargain, or to not being able to dictate the terms with the parties who have a larger bargaining power, or who have an upper hand from us in bargaining or in negotiating the terms. So coming to the next point, ineffective correspondences during a transaction. Lack of recorded communication between the parties reserving the rights to claim liquidated damages, if any. Lack of acknowledgement from the buyer regarding unequivocal acceptance, etc. So ineffective correspondences during a transactions. So what is ineffective correspondences? So that we have raised the work order, but we did not communicate it via mail. So, and even if we have communicated it via mail, we did not ask for the acknowledgement, or we did not ask whether there was any rectification, whether there was any defect or deficiency in our services or goods just after supplying them. So these are all the ineffective correspondences, and the ineffective correspondences also includes that we are facing losses, but we are extending the credit period, we are continuing with our transactions, and we are not saying that we are facing losses. We have faced this much of losses by far, and we want to claim this losses from you along with the principal amount. So when we do not say this out loud to the other party, when we do not reserve these rights of claiming damages, of claiming liquidated damages from the other party, then it becomes ineffective correspondences. And to realize these amounts and to realize these claims afterwards, when we have not said or we have not uttered a word relating to this at a later stage, at a belated stage, becomes very much difficult for the MSMEs to realize this. So we always have to, as I said, that you always have to be quick in turning around for reserving your rights, or into making communications. So whenever you supply goods or services to the other party, I would advise you to also, along with the physical copy, physical executed copy, to also share a copy of a soft copy via an email, and you ask for an acknowledgement from the other party that yes, that they have received the work order or purchase order, or let's say the services or goods have been delivered. And after that, you have to incorporate such provisions under your work order, or let's say agreement, that if defects or deficiency found any in the delivery of your goods and services, it has to be pointed out by the opposite party in, let's say, 15 days after which after he has received the goods or services from you. And there has to be a rectification clause that if defects and deficiencies are found, then a rectification period should be given to you, that you are given an opportunity to rectify such defects or deficiency. So when you have this much, when you have these clauses, these specific clauses which speaks for rectification, which speaks for deficiency and defects in goods, then the other party cannot at a belated stage come and say that, look, your services were not up to the mark, I did not find your services good, and I am not ready to pay the amount which was agreed. So when we have already agreed for a clause in the agreement, then it has to be done as per the clause. Now they cannot come at a belated stage and just frivolously state that the deficiency in the services or the defects in the goods, because they also have to reserve their rights by saying this out loud at a earlier stage when they receive the goods and services, that saying that these goods are defective or these services are deficient in manner. So you have to incorporate these clauses so that these clauses at a later point of time does not become an impediment in realizing your claims. So these are the things which we have to keep in mind. And the claim of liquidated damages. So what are liquidated damages? Liquidated damages are nothing but which are liquidated, so which can be calculated. So and the damages, how it can be calculated? The damages can be calculated if we have faced the losses, such losses of the damages. Now, I've already, and in my earlier webinar also, we discussed this in very detail, that what liquidated damages are and how it should be asked for, how it should be claimed, that it cannot be compensatory in nature, that it has to has a consonance with the actual losses suffered. You cannot say that if you delay one day in payment, I'll you will be penalized with 100 of rupees, and if you the 2 days delayed, if 2 days delay is made, then you 50 rupees is increased, and 3 days it becomes 300, 4 days it becomes 500. It cannot be like that. It has to be a consonance. It has to relate to the actual losses suffered by you. So when I say liquidated damages, then I say that all the losses, all the cascading effect that were faced by you, all the dominoes effect that were faced by you just because of the delayed payment, that the delayed payment happens, you cannot pay your workforce, you cannot pay for operating your businesses, and you lose out on the current opportunity, you lose out on the upcoming opportunity. So you lose out on the profits, you lose out on paying the workforces who are idle for so much time, and you pay for the workforces, you pay for the machinery which were idle. So all of these things are the losses that you suffered just because the payment were delayed to you by one opposite party. So it is not like that these losses cannot be claimed. So these losses also can be claimed, and these losses also have to be always recorded. So when I say that all of things are to be recorded, then let's say that according as per any agreement, you had to go. I just saw that one of the attendees are construction and engineering service providers. So let's say that you have to end-to-end manage a construction business for a construction company. Then you might have to rent an office, you might have to hire a workforce, let's say an engineer or a manager who would manage the project for you. So all of these things have to be done in a recorded manner. So whatever things that you are doing basing on the agreement, if you are taking an office on rent, so you take it on, you record that transactions too, that this transactions is arising out of this agreement, and this agreement required me to go and rent out this office, go and hire these many professionals, or to take on these many machineries for completing my work. And those transactions also has to be recorded. If you're hiring someone on, let's say, 50,000 per month, then you have to have an employment agreement or independent consultant agreement, which states that you have to pay this guy 50,000 rupees per month, and you are doing so because it is required by this agreement. So whenever this agreement is terminated and you have to pay, and you have to suffer losses by paying this guy 2 or 3 amounts of salary, whereas you're not receiving anything in return from the agreement, or from basing on the from the opposite party, basing on the agreement that you entered into. So all of these things that you can compute or you can claim, uh, along with the principal amount and the applicable interest. So it one of the most important thing that the most of the MSMEs miss out on is the computing of claims. Then you cannot fathom your mind around that, how much heads and how much claims that you are eligible to raise from the opposite party. And many a times I've seen cases where the principal amount generally ranges between 5 to 6 lakh rupees, and the applicable interest and all the other claims, when computed effectively, it it becomes in when added together, it becomes 20 lakhs. So the 15 lakh of amount, what makes your claim is based on the liquidated claims and the applicable interest, and not on the principal amount. So many of the cases, your principal amounts would be surpassed by the claims and the applicable interest. So you always have to be careful and meticulous enough that why you should not go for liquidated damages. What I was handling one client. I want to share this with all of you. He stated that he doesn't want to claim any interest. He just want to go for the principal amount. He just doesn't want to claim any damages, or to claim any liquidated damages, or to interest for that matter. He was so much frustrated from delayed payment that he just wanted his principal amount. And he stated to me that, sir, that I do not want to claim anything else from my principal amount. You just get my principal amount from that opposite party. Then I made him understand. I made the MSME enterprise understand that it is not like that you are frustrated, or you just want your principal amount to be realized. Because when you are entering into a dispute, it is not like that you are getting your principal amount tomorrow. So you're anyway not getting your principal amount tomorrow, or let's say in between, when you are resolving your dispute, or when you are litigating with the other party. So I do not see any reason to why you should not go for all the claims that you have from the opposite party, because anyway you're not going to receive the money. And if your claims are accepted, then it increases your amount, which you would be able to realize anyway. At a point of time, you'll be able to realize your principal amount also. So I do not see any reason why you should not go for claiming liquidated damages, or to claim applicable interest when you're already entering into dispute. So the last part is difficulty in realizing payments from buyers, cash transactions, etc. So cash transaction is one of the most major impediments. I've seen the MSMEs doing so because they want to evade taxes. They want to not pay GST a lot of times. So what they do is they undervalue their transaction. They show the goods that were transferred were of less amount. So let's say if they have transferred 10 tons of TMT to any party, then they would only show 1 ton of TMT is being transferred to that party, because they'll have to pay interest, the tax amount on that 1 ton of the goods, and not the 10 tons of the good. But you also have to always remember that now that your tax is only paid for 1 ton of TMTs, the transaction is recorded for 1 ton of TMTs. Now, if the dispute occurs, you can only go for the court, you can only approach the court, you can only go before the court for the disputes of 1 ton of TMT. Now you cannot say that you transferred 10 tons of TMT, because the transaction doesn't show. It only shows the 1 ton of 1 ton of TMTs were transferred. So you by yourself have undervalued your claim. And many a times when disputes happen, the transactions won't be as the transactions wouldn't be as good as it was in reality. So you by yourself are undervaluing your claim, or undervaluing your realization amount, just because of evading on some amount of taxes or some amount of income tax. So these things have to be kept in mind. And I would never advise, I've said this thing earlier also, and I'll always say this, that I would never advise being an advocate or being a lawyer to go and to do anything which is not allowed, and to evade taxes, because the consequences are much greater than the time being of benefit that you are receiving from evading taxes. So at the given point of time, you might feel that you have saved on 18% of GST on a very big transaction. But let's say if you enter into a dispute, so now that 18% is not in question, the whole 100% is in question. And just because of saving that 18% of that 18% from that 100%, you forego your 100% completely. So that shouldn't be the case. And it is very much a foolish thing to do so, I would say. So it should not be done. And all of the statutory filings, all of the statutory requirements are to be met, so that you are not at fault at any way, so that it becomes an impediment for you to claim your damages or to claim your delayed payments from the opposite party. So now coming to the next slide. Solutions and way forwards. Preventive measures and solutions to be adopted internally in an enterprise. To enter into a written agreement, according the understanding of terms between the parties, duly executed, properly stamped and notarized. Work purchase orders to be raised under such agreement. Work purchase orders to be shared on an electronic medium too, even if a hard copy of the same is raised. Recording each and every transaction, its terms, obligations, applicable interest upon delayed payment, consequences of breach, force majeure, indemnity, dispute resolution clause, clause to notify defect or damaged goods or services, rectification period, unequivocal acceptance of work purchase order if no defect, protest, or demur has been pointed out by the buyer. So we have dealt this in our previous slide also, that to enter into a written agreement recording the understanding of terms, how it is important, how it lays down the document for the neutral party who is adjudging your dispute whenever you enter into a dispute, to govern his actions from. So just how the Constitution acts for the laws of our country, that it is a parent legislature, every law has to be in contours of the Constitution. Our agreement for the transaction acts as the Constitution for that transaction. So now if you have an agreement for a transaction, the transaction has to be governed through the agreement. The neutral party who is adjudging your dispute, if it has already gone for disputes, now cannot go beyond the transaction which are recorded in a way of agreement. So even if we go into arbitration or conciliation, so the transaction, the agreement becomes the agreement becomes the guiding document, the parent document, basing on which the interpretations are ascertained, that how the understanding between the parties were at the time of executing the contract. So it is very much important to have the agreements and the recorded terms in a very clear, concise, and unequivocal manner. So we do not have to give much of scope for the arbitrators to decide or to apply his mind, because when we are too much clear in our contract, or let's say if we are said that we'll be entitled to receive liquidated damages on the bills of actuals. So when we say on bills of actuals, so it means that if we provide the bills that we have suffered these much of losses, and we have provided the arbitrator with the bills, that these are the bills and these are the payments that we have made, and these are the losses that we have suffered, and we'll be able to claim that liquidated damages in case that the other party breaches on its obligations, then the arbitrator doesn't have much to do. It has to compute the claim. It has to compute all the bills that you provide him to. It has to decide whether it comes as a liquidated damages or it is a loss suffered by you. And if it is a loss suffered by you, then it has to grant you the losses that are suffered to you. Or let's say if you have come up with the pre-estimate of damages. So a lot of times when people say that we would not claim liquidated damages as in when on the actual basis, but we are just estimating, we are pre-estimating amount that we believe is a genuine pre-estimate. So that pre-estimate also has to have a consonance with the losses that the parties can suffer in these kind of transactions. So even if you are deciding an amount also without suffering the loss as liquidated damages, so let's say if you entered into a transaction of 5 crore rupees and you, let's say, decided that the liquidated damages would not go beyond 50 lakhs. So you're also limiting the liability, and you're also saying that this is the genuine pre-estimate, and these transactions generally do have losses, and these breaches do have losses, and these losses are likely to range between 50 to, let's say, 60 lakhs or to 40 lakhs, then the court doesn't go into whether it is accurate or not. It only decides, it only checks that whether it is a genuine pre-estimate or not. And if it is a genuine pre-estimate, it has to be granted. So as much clear your as much clear and concise your terms and conditions in the contracts are, the less scope of interpretation and the less scope of application of minds are provided or accorded to the neutral party to decide the understanding between the parties, or to ascertain the understanding between the parties. So it has to be duly executed, properly stamped and notarized. So it has to be signed by the both of the parties. Now it has to be stamped also. Now you pay a certain fee to the government that this transaction we have entered into, this is a commercial transaction, we are receiving some amount, and we are giving some goods to the other party, and you pay a certain fees basing on that. So it has to be properly stamped. So when it is stamped, it gets into the record of the government. It gets into the record of the government. The government has received the requisite fees on that transaction, on that commercial transaction, which is applicable. So it is generally found under the Stamp Duty Act. So you can always find the applicable stamp duty on basing on the kind of agreement of the transaction you are entering with the party, entering into with the party. So, and it has to be notarized. Notarized is nothing but you go to the notary and you ask him to take on record this agreement. So when you notarize the agreement, it is on record. It is taken on record by the government that this transaction has been entered between these two parties. So these are very much important, and it has to be done. So now coming to work purchase orders to be raised under such agreement. So as I said, that the work purchase order has to be raised. Work purchase orders to be shared on an electronic medium too, even if a hard copy of the same is raised. So when I say that, when we have raised a hard copy of a work order, or let's say purchase order, then the other party has this rebuttal to always come and say that the work order or the agreement, the sign in that agreement or the signature on that work order is not mine, or someone else signed it, or someone who was not authorized to sign it on the enterprise's behalf signed it. So I'm not binding, or it doesn't bind the enterprise. So all of these are rebuttals which are available. So it is always safe to also share the work order or purchase order in an electronic medium by way of email, so that it becomes irrebuttable. Now, no one can come and say that someone has signed this on my behalf and I did not know of this, and someone has also mailed this on my behalf. So when we have evidences, and record on two platforms, so let's say online platform and offline also, offline record and online record also, then it becomes irrebuttable for the other party to come and say that the signature was forged, or the party who signed it was not authorized, and many other frivolous disputes. So these things has to be kept in mind. Recording each and every transaction, it terms, obligations, applicable interest upon delayed payment, consequences of breach, force majeure, indemnity, dispute resolution clause. So all of these clauses are important clauses in an agreement. So recording of each and every transaction, it terms, what terms you want the parties to adhere to while the transaction is going on, the obligations of the parties. So what are the parties are obligated to do in the transactions towards the transaction, towards the other party. Applicable interest upon the delayed payment. So the applicable interest is anyway going to be the 3 times of the applicable interest notified by the RBI, because it is statutory. It is written under the MSME Act. So we have to also write it somewhere that we are Udyog Aadhaar, we do possess Udyog Aadhaar number, or we are registered as an MSME, so that the other party gets an idea that it has to pay an applicable interest of 3 times the notified interest by the RBI to the delayed payment. So all of these things has to be recorded in the agreement. Consequences of breach. So what are the consequences of breach would be in an agreement? The liquidated damages part. All of the consequences which would follow from that breach are to be recorded. The force majeure, act of God. So many times situations happens which are not under our control. So let's say the factory is burnt. The factory caught fire, and all the operations were hampered for 2-3 months because everything was burnt. So these things are not under our control, and these things, if included or force majeure clauses are drafted effectively, it excuses the other party to perform its obligation when it is not able to do so, and its inability does not comes from its own breach, but something which is out of his or her control, or out of its control. So it is a very beneficial clause. The indemnity clause is there, that whenever there is breach by the other party and you have suffered any losses, then the other party has to indemnify. Indemnification is nothing but to make good of the losses, that all the all the losses that you have suffered just because of the breach of the other party is entitled to indemnify you for all those losses. So that is indemnification for you. Dispute resolution clause can be there, that this is how we'll resolve our dispute, that we can mutually sit and we can decide, or we can conciliate on the dispute, and if it fails, then we'd go to the arbitration, or anything like that. And which high court or which courts would have jurisdiction, whether would be the venue, whether would be the place of arbitration. It has to be taken into consideration when drafting all of these clauses. Clauses to notify defect or damaged goods and services rectification period. So I stated earlier that the clause to notify defect should be there, that if we have supplied some goods or services, let's say, then a clause should be there that if any defect or deficiency is found in the services or the goods which are supplied by us, it has to be pointed out by the opposite party. Let's say after not in within 15 days from receiving those services and goods. And if no protest or deficiency is pointed out, then it would be construed that it is unequivocally accepted. So it has to be written in that manner, that if you come out with any deficiency or defect, so let's say in 15 days from the date I've delivered you the goods and services, then it is fine. We can rectify those defects or services, and we can be given 15 days of rectification clause, that the MSMEs are given 15 days of rectification opportunity, that if there are any defects or deficiencies found in services and goods supplied by us or delivered by us, then we are given the opportunity to rectify it also. And if no defects and deficiencies are pointed out in those 15 days of time, or let's say 20 days of time, then it would be constituted or automatically be believed that it is unequivocally accepted by the party. So coming to the next one, being adept with the communication, reserving of rights to claim damages, if any, receiving acknowledgement of the due amount from the buyer, taking steps to resolve issues before the claims are barred by limitation, follow-ups on delayed payments, balance payments, intimation of applicable interest, not diluting its right as a party by way of conduct, negotiating, and careful of the agreed payment terms. So all of these we have already discussed, that we have to adapt to the communications, we have to reserve our rights to claim damages. It can exist in a lot of heads, that price escalation, idlement of machinery, and loss of profit, loss of opportunities. All of these heads under which we can claim loss or claim damages, if any. So acknowledgement we have to receive, that whenever we are sending out any purchase orders or work orders, we have to receive acknowledgement from the other parties. The payment terms have to be crystallized, that it has to be 45 days, not much more than 45 days, because I do not see any reason why anyone would agree to a payment term more than 45 days when it is already restricted to 45 days under the Act itself. So all these things should be taken into consideration. We have to be very much wary about the limitation. So the Limitation Act applies to the arbitration of the MSME Act also. So it generally is for 3 years. It generally is for 3 years from the date the amount fell due. So the limitation has to be kept in mind, and acknowledgement in this way is very much beneficial for the MSMEs. So in a way, whenever let's say that the amount fell due on 20th of June, or let's say it's 31st of October today, and the amount fell due today, and ideally it should be 3 years from now. So 31st October 2025 would be ideally the last date of limitation. But let's say if an acknowledgement is received after in between those 3 days before the limitation has expired. So in between those 3 years, if at any time an acknowledgement is received by the opposite party that yes, I do have to pay this much of amount, and we will pay this much of amount to you, we have this much of due which is payable to you, then the acknowledgement gives the limitations a fresh start. So now whenever the acknowledgement is received, so let's say the acknowledgement was given on 1st December 2022 by the opposite party, then the limitation would be applicable from that 1st December of 2022. So we are again running behind on the time limit. I tend to speak and harp upon one issue a lot more. So and because of that, we always run behind in time. So I'll try to wrap it up again. So coming up on the next slide, thank you so much, Richa, for reminding it to me again. So there are external solutions: resolution of disputes, litigation, ADR and ODR. So recourse from MSEFC as per the provisions of MSMED Act is there. Proceeding under Section 138 of negotiable instruments are available. Insolvency and bankruptcy code, alternate dispute resolution. So all of these external solutions which we can have a recourse to when the issues have already arisen, when the payments are already delayed, defaulted, and it's not realized. So all of these recourses which are available to MSMEs, and we can pick and choose from these recourses that how we want to go forward with our issues of delayed payments. So the first is MSEFC, the Micro Small Enterprises Facilitation Council. It is not for medium enterprises, and it is only for micro and small enterprises. And coming to the next one is proceedings under Section 138 of the Negotiable Instruments Act 1881, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, alternate dispute resolution, civil suit for recovery of money, summary suits, summary judgments, and mutual resolution. So we'll discuss this one by one. First, coming to the reference to a dispute to MSMEFC. So Section 7 of MSEFC's classification of enterprises, that how the enterprises is classified, whether they are micro, small, or medium. If you would go and if you would refer the act, you would see that the parameters are still outdated and they are not incorporated as per the new amendment, which was notified recently. So it is still outdated, but the classification is governed by the recent amendment, which was laid out in the table, which was in our earlier slide. And the Section 9 is measures for promotion and development. It says that the central government can come up with a lot of measures to promote and develop MSMEs. Section 10 is for credit facilities, that the credit facilities, the promotion, the facilitation in receiving credit facilities, loans and schemes for the MSMEs, that they have particular specialized loan schemes, and all of those credit facilities are extended towards the MSMEs, especially MSMEs, because they contribute a huge chunk to our economy. Section 11 is procurement preference policy. I've seen central government giving preference to MSMEs in any procurement policy. So I've seen any bids from the central government that are open to all, and whenever any the lowest bidder who is not an MSME has made a lowest bid, but let's say the one MSME has made a bid which is not lowest but 10% more than the lowest bidder. So I've seen cases where the bid, instead of going to the lowest bidder, has gone to the MSME just because of its virtue of being an MSME, and it gets a preference policy in the procurement by the central government. Section 12 is the funds, the grant of funds by the central governments to MSMEs, to MSMEs, and how it should be appropriated. The grants by the central government is in Section 13. Section 14 is administration and utilization of funds, how it is to be administered and how it is to be utilized. Section 15 is liability of buyer to make payments. So when the liability of buyer to make payments arises, so it says that the buyer has to make the payments after 45 days, and after 45 days the interest would be applicable, which is 3 times the rate of the RBI notified interest, which is in Section 16. Section 18 is reference to MSEFC. Reference to MSEFC starts with conciliation. We make a reference to MSEFC, we upload our work order, we upload our agreement, and we say that the payment is delayed. The MSEFC, after examining our documents, issues a notice to the opposite party to make payment to the MSEFC in a prescribed time limit, and if it is not done, then they are referred to the conciliation, and conciliator is appointed by the MSEFC, and if the conciliation fails, then they are referred to the arbitration, where they arbitrate and the arbitrator are judged upon their dispute and accordingly passes an award. Section 19 is the application for setting aside decree, award, or order. So it is one of the most important section in the MSMED Act, which says that whenever the award is to be challenged, so let's say in Section 18, a reference was made to MSEFC, and MSEFC has gone into arbitration and was successfully able to secure an award from the arbitrator. So now the opposite party wants to challenge that award in Section 19. So when the opposite party wants to challenge the award, then it is not like that it has to go and it has to challenge the award and it would always be into litigation. So one of the most beneficial thing under this act is that under Section 19, 75% of the award you have to pre-deposit before challenging that award. So only genuine claims are genuine appeals are made. So no one would go and would make an appeal just because they want to make an appeal, because they anyway have to deposit the 75% of the award amount, which is passed anyway by the MSEFC. So only genuine appeals are made. So it acts as a filter that only genuine appeals are made in are taken in appeal. Section 24 is the overriding effect of the MSMED Act. It says that MSMED Act has an overriding effect over all the other acts, which is Contracts Act or the Arbitration Act for that matter. So whenever there is an arbitration clause also, dispute resolution clause also, while dealing with PSUs or large corporate bodies, you would see that they already have dispute resolution clauses in their agreement. So even if they have a dispute resolution clauses in their agreement, the reference to MSEFC can be done and it would have an overriding effect on that clause, because Arbitration and Conciliation Act was enacted in 1996 opposed to this act, which was enacted in 2006, and this act has an overriding effect on all the other acts. So all the other acts which were enacted prior to this act, MSMED Act 2006, MSMED Act will have an overriding effect over all those acts. Now, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Act 2016 also has an overriding effect over all the acts. Now, the MSME Act is enacted in 2006, but Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code is enacted in 2016. So ideally and naturally, IBC has overriding effect on MSMED Act also. So even if you are taking on your dispute or have made a reference and your arbitration is going on before MSEFC and someone goes and files for insolvency and it is accepted in case, then everything, all the other thing is stopped. And you have to go and you have to come under IBC to raise your claim and to realize your claim, because IBC has an overriding effect. So I hope I'm clear in this particular point. Coming to the next one, recourse after dishonoring of checks under Negotiable Instrument Act. So whenever we talked about extended credit period, whenever we are giving extended credit period, so one thing which we can do to make secure our payments is to receive post-dated checks. So we can ask the customers to give us post-dated checks after the payment terms. So let's say when the payment term expires, you ask the other party to cut a check of the required amount, of the invoiced amount, after the payment term is expired. So after the 45 days, you ask him for a check, and you get a check of that post date. So what you can do is, if the amount is delayed or defaulted, you can just go and you can give the check to the bank operator. And if it is dishonored, so if it is honored, then well and fine, you have received your amount anyway, whatever was due. And if it is dishonored, then you have claim under section 138 of Negotiable Instrument Acts, Instrument Act 1881, because it has been dishonored, and dishonored checks for the reasons of insufficient of fund, or for any other account, or on any other account. So the presumption in the favor, the presumption under this one section 138 acts under the favor of the check holder. So whoever is holding the check, the presumption is always to his favor that the check was given to the check holder to discharge a liability, to discharge a prior liability. So a check is given to discharge a debt or a liability. So the presumption is always on the favor of the check holder that the check has been received in furtherance of discharging a liability. And section 148 is the cognizance of offense. It is also, you can also simultaneously move ahead with criminal ramifications and civil ramifications. You receive memorandum, not memorandum, you receive an undertaking, or just a memo from bank stating the reason, and stating that the check numbering this issued to this has been dishonored due to insufficiency of funds, or on any other account. So after that, in 10 days, you have to write a notice to the opposite party intimating him that the check has been dishonored, and you require him to make the payment. And if the payment is not made, then after 30 days after 30 days from making that notice to the other party, you can go and you can file your civil case as well as criminal case under section 138 and 142. 142, the cognizance of offense is generally taken by the metropolitan magistrate or judicial magistrate of the first class. So action can be taken both the enterprise and signatory of the dishonored check. It is a strong arm twisting mechanism because no one wants a criminal case or a civil case on their own name. So let's say someone doesn't care about the cases upon their enterprises because enterprises have an separate identity, and they're treated as a separate identity in a whole in our legal system. So the enterprise and the signatory of the check equally can be held liable for the dishonoring of checks. So going to the next slide, recourse under insolvency and bankruptcy code. So all the MSMEs who have the issues of delayed payments are defined under section 5 of 521, which is definition of operational creditors. Who are operational creditors? There are two creditors who are defined under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016, which are financial creditors and operational creditors. Financial creditors are no one but who tender the finances, who gives the money to the opposite party or to anyone, or that there has to be a time and value of the consideration. So any consideration which is to be given, it has to have a time and value of such consideration. Those are financial creditors. Operational creditors are those who have their dues which arises from provisions of goods and services. So if we have provided goods and services, or if we are an employee of let's say a company, then our dues being an employee, or let's say being a vendor supplying goods or services to that company, we would be governed, we would be under operational creditors. We would fall under the definition of operational creditors in the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. Section 8 the relevant for is section 8 is relevant for operational creditors, in which the operational creditors are required to send a demand notice to the corporate debtor. So the corporate from which the amount is due, or from whom the amount is delayed for a long period of time, you go and you issue a demand notice in form 1, in form 1, if I'm not wrong, of IBC, in which you give a notice to the corporate debtor that this much of amount is due, and you can raise any dispute which is already persisting between in arising out of that transaction, or you can just make the payment. If the payment is not made in 10 days of time after making the notice, after furnishing the demand notice under section 8, section 9 application can be filed before the NCLT. Now, section 9 application, before filing section 9 application, the amount due has to be more than 1 crore of rupees. So it was earlier 1 lakh, but it has been increased to 1 crore of rupees. So if the quantum of amount increases 1 crore of rupees, the delayed amount or the defaulted amount is more than 1 crore of rupees, then this is also a very strong arm twisting technique of how we can recover the amount which is due from the corporate debtor. Because what insolvency and bankruptcy code does is replace the whole management of the corporate debtor. So it throws out the existing management. It appoints a resolution professional which manages the company, which ascertain all the claims which the corporate debtor has, which computes all the claims of all the claimants that there is for the corporate debtor, and it computes all the assets and liabilities of the corporate debtor, and it goes on the market. So all the liabilities of that corporate debtor, all the assets of that corporate debtors are incorporated in an information memorandum, and it is floated in a market for other parties to manage. So if one party is interested in buying off that company, or in managing that company, then it can make an offer that how much of an amount he can tender for that deal, and basing on that amount, all the claimants would realize their claim amounts. So it is called resolution applicant. So all the resolution applicant will submit their resolution applications, under which they would come out with compromises and arrangements that this is how we will take care of all the claimants, this is how we'll distribute the claims, or this much of amount will be tendering, and this is how we want to take it forward. So and as COC is constituted, COC is committee of creditors, which only comprises of financial creditors. So operational creditor doesn't form a part of committee of creditors, and it only involves financial creditors. So the committee of creditors decide which resolution application is best suited for them, and then accordingly the resolution application is finalized. And if there exists no offer, or if no offer is made, then the company goes into liquidation. The company is sold off as a going concern, or not as a going concern, and whatever amount that is received from liquidating the company is distributed amongst the claimants on a pro rata basis. So the operational creditors, just because they are not made part of the COC, a lot of time the COC doesn't think much about the operational creditors, and a lot of times they do not get the amount which were due. So let's say if an operational creditor had 10 crores of due amount, so it might be possible that after resolution application, after everything, he is only able to realize 10 lakhs of rupees or 15 lakhs of rupees against that 10 crore of rupees, because the financial creditors would always decide the offers which are best suited to them. And as I stated, that committee of creditors only involves and only constitutes the financial creditors. So it is natural to say that financial creditors would prefer their own needs much more than the operational creditors' claims. So it is always have to keep in mind that the haircuts are very much large in the recourse under insolvency and bankruptcy code. If we are getting it, if we are getting the issues settled before the company being admitted into insolvency and bankruptcy code, then it is fine, then it is good. But if it goes into insolvency, then it might be possible that the operational creditors are not able to realize even half the amount what the delayed payment was originally. So all of these things have to be kept in mind. So, and section 53 is the waterfall mechanism. The waterfall mechanism is last filter. So if you were to get an amount as per the section 53 of waterfall mechanism, the waterfall mechanism lays out in a manner in which a preference in which the creditors have to be placed. So it says that the insolvency cost has to be paid foremostly, and the first and the foremost thing to pay is the insolvency cost, CIRP cost, and then the employers and the workmen are paid, then the financial creditors are paid, secured creditors are paid, and the operational creditors are placed much more in lower pedestal, but it guarantees a minimum of amount that this cannot be less than this amount, that if we follow the waterfall mechanism in any circumstance, you would see that there is an amount which are to be received by the operational creditor, and the amount which are to be received by the operational creditor under the waterfall mechanism cannot be lower than the resolution applicant realization. So any resolution application which has been made or which has been offered has to keep in mind the waterfall mechanism. The operational creditor cannot get an amount lower than what it should have gotten under waterfall mechanism. So any resolution applicant, any offer that is being made to the company will always have to honor the limit of amount which is there in the waterfall mechanism, which as per the waterfall mechanism, the operational creditor would have gotten. So it is there. Section 53, it acts as a last resort to guarantee that this much of amount would always be available to the operational creditor if in any set of given circumstances. So we filed the claims before IRPs and RPs. I told you that the statutory resolution professional which is appointed to take over the management of the erstwhile companies. So we filed a claim between them that these are our claims, and after that the IRP, basing on the documents submitted by us, accepts or rejects the claim. He might accept a part of claim, he might accept a part, he might reject a part of claim, or he might entirely accept or reject the claim. So these are there, and these are the recourses and the benefits and eligibility criteria to get a recourse under under insolvency and bankruptcy code. So as I stated, again, I am reiterating, the realization of amount due is not guaranteed, that based on the resolution plan, if any, distribution of proceeds as per waterfall mechanism. So if you had 10 crores of rupees due, it is not necessary that you will receive 10 crores of rupees after insolvency is successfully carried out. Resolution by way of alternate dispute resolution, online dispute resolution. So what is Arbitration and Conciliation Act? So even if we go into MSEFC, the MSEFC also resolve our dispute through Arbitration and Conciliation Act. So I'll just briefly touch upon some of the important sections of Arbitration and Conciliation Act, because if I were to delve deep into all of these provisions, it will take another masterclass of 2 hours or 3 hours in deciding, in giving you the detailed analysis or detailed provisions, detailed clarifications on these provisions of arbitration, or let's say insolvency or bankruptcy codes. So section 9, interim measures by courts. So whenever we refer dispute to arbitration, so till the time the arbitration tribunal is constituted, or even if the arbitration tribunal is constituted, in exceptional circumstances, we can approach the courts saying that interim measures are to be given. So there are certain situations where if certain things are not done at the instant, then it completely defeats the whole idea of 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 receiving the prayer that you have at a later stage of time. So let's say if there is an intellectual property dispute and someone is rampaging your goodwill by diluting your goodwill by making a similar or identical mark and coming into the market. So interim measures in those situations are very much important, because it is every day the consumer is getting confused, or consumer is getting diluted in their own mind to the source of the brand image that you had. So every day you are facing losses, and every day would be the facing of losses every day would be too much huge, so that whenever the recourse is granted, the whole purpose is defeated. The idea in the mind of the consumer is already diluted, so they are already confused between those two marks. So because as you already know that all the litigation, even dispute resolution, goes at least for 1.5 years at least. I'm saying that I've seen a lot of cases uh, when it is wrapped up in 6 months, but those are exceptional cases, and both the parties have to be very much serious in approaching their disputes to get it wrapped under 6 months. But it goes for 1 year at least. So after 1 year, you are getting the recourse, and by far the image or the your brand is already disputed in the minds of the customer, then it is of no use. So interim measures are are the provision which can be resorted to in these types of circumstances, where every day you're facing losses which would be too high or which would be too much enough, so that you cannot wait for the recourse. You cannot wait for the entire process for the case to come to an end, and you want the court to intervene at this stage to give you interim measures. So section 9 is that provision. Section 11 is appointment of arbitrator. Section 11, you file before the High Court of the respective state, which has the jurisdiction over the dispute resolution clause. And one more thing I would like to say, that I've seen a lot of PSUs and a lot of corporate bodies having their agreement, which says that that arbitrator is appointed vonorously by them, and it is their own officer who is appointed as arbitrator, but it is not required, not necessarily for you to agree to that appointment of arbitrator. You can just deny that you do not agree to that appointment of arbitrator, and it has to be appointed mutually. You will appoint one arbitrator, the other party will appoint an arbitrator, and the both the arbitrators uh, cumulatively would appoint or would agree on one independent arbitrator, if it has to be, if it is for the one arbitral tribunal, and if it is for the three arbitral tribunal, then one neutral party is decided. Section 17 is again the interim measures before arbitration tribunal. Section 16 of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act says that arbitration tribunal is competent to rule on its own jurisdiction. So even if it is a question of limitation, or whether the arbitration tribunal is competent enough to deal with this issue, the arbitration tribunal is regarded competent enough to deal on those questions. So all these questions are to be put before the arbitration rather than the courts. And courts do not have much to do just to see whether the dispute resolution arbitration agreement exists, a proper arbitration exists, valid arbitration agreement clause exists or not, or the disputes are arbitrable or not. So filing of claims, how do we go with the arbitration? We approach the arbitrator, we file our statement of claim by laying out all of the claims that we have against the other party. The other party then furnishes the statement of defense, that are defenses that they have against our claims, or the counter claims that they have against our claims. After that, we submit any list of evidences, any witness, any statement of witnesses, any list of witnesses that we want to rely upon if it is needed. And then we file written submissions, we file all the documents, all the reliance all the relied upon documents is filed. After that, the submissions are made, and accordingly the arbitrator decides upon an award. The seat, venue, and jurisdiction is important, as I stated, that whether the seat of the arbitration should be the jurisdiction of which high court would be there on the arbitration agreement, which high court would be competent enough to deal upon the disputes, whether the arbitration clause is arbitrable, whether the dispute is arbitrable or not. So a lot of disputes are not arbitrable, or some of the disputes are not arbitrable. So taxation disputes are not arbitrable, rent disputes are not arbitrable. So these arbitrability issues are to be seen by the courts. So appointment of arbitrator, ad hoc arbitrations, arbitration with government instrumentalities, as I stated, that it is not necessary to agree that their officer would be the only arbitrator, and it is not good in law. So if you deny that you do not agree to their onerously appointed arbitrator, then you can appoint arbitrator from your side too. Civil suit for recovery. This is the classic tool, the last and classic tool for any suit for recovery, that you file a suit for recovery. You go in civil procedure court, you file a suit that this much of amount is due, and I do not think that much of deliberation is required under the suits part. That it is very much clear that civil suits are there for recovery of payments, and it is the most classic way of recovering the dispute, and the very old one at that. So I'm really very sorry. My internet connection was down for a moment. So the last slide was anyway for the CPC summary tools. So quick tips and suggestions. I would anyway, without any slide, I would say that always mention your UN number, GST number, your addresses in the invoice, so that it is complied with all the statutory requirements which are under Servant Credit rules or GST rules, or UN number you are providing, so that the other party knows that you are Udyogadhar member, and it has to comply with the 3-time interest rates if they have to delay the payments. So those are the quick tips and suggestions. Always take professional advice. Be adept with securing your assets by registering trademarks, designs, and things like that. Always be careful about all the other statutory requirements that you have to follow. Being a food industry, you have to follow FSSAI requirements a lot, food adulteration requirements. Yeah, if you deal into plastics, you have to see the plastics. You must be really aware about the recent ban on the single uses of plastics, and there are a lot of classifications plastics too. So a lot of statutory requirements are there. Or now these regulators are not very much efficient in doing their work, because a lot of checks are not carried out by those regulators. But whenever they are carried out, I must warn you, the penalties are generally so harsh and so huge. So it's better always to be adept and ready from your end, and to not wait for those penalties to get yourself or to comply with statutory registrations. Thank you so much. I'll take the questions if any one of them have questions.
सर काफी आसान शब्दों में आपने आज का वेबिनार
समझाया
सभी पार्टिसिपेंट, और काफी क्वेश्चंस भी आ रहे थे. जैसे मैं
I see a lot of participants already left. maybe because it was extended for a long time. But I try to be as much detailing in my deliberation.
मैं सभी पार्टिसिपेंट से रिक्वेस्ट करना चाहूंगी, जिसके भी क्वेश्चंस हैं आप हैंड रेज कर लीजिए. मैं सब एक करके सर के साथ कनेक्ट करूंगी, देन आप पूछ सकते हैं सर से क्वेश्चन. तो रेणुका जी को मैं कनेक्ट कर रही हूँ.
Sure. Hello, Renuka.
Yeah, hi.
So see, we make machines and we make customized machines. Okay. Now, when we make a customized machine, we've already got our advance, and there is a technical drawing which has to be approved and certified and all of that. Now, after manufacturing the entire machine, we were supposed to raise a proforma, and against the proforma, before dispatch, payment had to be made. Once we raised the proforma and the commercial invoice, now the client said he does not want the machine. In our
Oh.
case, especially, the problem is that our designs are very highly professionally done. So in that case,
No,
then
no,
you
no.
have to,
I completely understand, Renuka. I've dealt with these issues before.
yes,
I know the industrial designs are very
yeah.
much case to
So
case
it is
specifics.
probably that he would have probably manufactured the same machine 5 times or something with somebody else also, right? That way, which is
Yeah,
not my
yeah.
concern. I don't really care. But about my real concern is that I've already manufactured, packed, and it is what is ready for dispatch. But these people have, after raising the proper mail to us saying that we don't want the machine.
Okay, Renuka. So it is a classic case of what we call as a promissory estoppel. So promissory estoppel is nothing but whenever an agreement is entered into between the parties, whatever actions that the other parties take in furtherance of that agreement is, if you have taken those actions in furtherance of that agreement, which is in this case is coming up with that machine, specific
Yeah.
machine according to their customization and specific needs, so
Yeah.
they cannot go back on their promise now. Uh, Without assigning any reasons whatsoever. So if they have any good reasons for doing so, then we'll have to assess that whether their reasons good enough or not. And I do not see that any reasons good enough to completely deny that we will not receive this machine altogether. So
Exactly, because it's like this, sir.
yeah,
If a shirt is made for your size, I can't sell
yeah.
it to somebody else. It's very
Yeah, I
difficult to find
completely
somebody who's
understand.
body.
And
Yeah,
you would be given all the amount uh, that you have spent on making that machine, because
absolutely.
it was that promise by the other party on the basis of which you went on and you manufactured that machine, right? So in law, the other party would be made liable for making all those payments. The only condition is that you are not in breach, or you have not made any breach in obligations. So even if you have
Correct.
made any breach in obligations also, it has to be given rectification, or it has to be talked out. It cannot be like that I do not want your machine altogether. It cannot be like that.
Correct.
So you have a very good case. I would say that you have a very good case, and you can go, and you can go. If you are going behind them, go behind them for every amount, every penny that you have spent on that machine, because
So,
it
sir,
was that
now,
promise.
no,
Yeah,
no. So can I get a recourse from MSME for this? Can I
sure.
upload the data and all of that? That's what I'm trying to ask. So a
Yeah,
legal
sure,
notice
you can, sure.
I did send them a legal notice and all of that, and the amount is not about
Okay.
1 crore rupees. So the NCLT Act is not applicable, but I did
So
send them
it's
a
not a
legal
problem.
process. But sir, वो city civil में क्या हो जाता है ना, the case takes its own lifetime to come to a solution. At
Yeah,
least we
I
feel with
completely
MSME.
understand, Renuka.
Yeah, yeah,
So in your case, MSEFC has the jurisdiction. It is not like the delayed payments, only the delayed payments which are invoices are
yeah.
unequivocally accepted, are only
Uh-huh.
accepted for reference. It is not like
Correct.
that.
Uh,
Even if there are interpretational issues, even if there are claims which are not there in the agreements, you can claim those agreements, and
okay,
it is
okay.
totally upon the arbitrator, and we
Uh,
have to make a reference before the MSEFC. It can be made in your case, and it can be taken by the MSEFC. And as you stated, that the city civil courts take on forever for wrapping up one single case. But
yes, yes.
MSEFC, I have seen that it goes mostly for 1 year. If it is extended, it goes mostly for 1 year. And I've seen cases when it is wrapped up in even 6 months. And you can do it online, you can do it as per your own convenience. So MSEFC is the best recourse for you.
Okay, sir. And sir, do I need a legal help for us to, file the documents and all that with MSME, or can we do it on our own?
So I would say, look, law is not something that very much is expertised based. So it is, if you know how to read English in a very good manner, then you can understand law. But having said that, you cannot think of everything that a lawyer can think of. So
Absolutely. That's a professional thing,
when
right?
I say that I have seen cases where the principal amount is 5 lakhs, and when we compute the claims, it becomes, the total claims becomes 25 lakhs. And a lot of time, the MSME do not have an idea that they can claim this much of amount, and this much of amount are entitled. They are entitled to get this much of amount.
Okay.
At least this much of amount would be in question to be decided upon or to be deliberated upon by the arbitrator. If not 25 lakhs would be given, at least 7 lakhs would be given, or 8 lakhs would be given. 8 lakhs would be given, which is again more than the 5 lakhs which you would have
Yes,
filed
absolutely.
the reference for.
Yeah.
So
Okay. So I just wanted to check with you on that one. Thank you so much. I think this is very
thank you, Rohit.
most of our manufacturing units are suffering because of this change in requirements and all of that, and we're really suffering with, and especially with all the refineries, so they're just arbitrarily delaying our payments. All of them, I can say. You take it from HPCL, BPCL, because my machines go to all the refineries. They come up with some new clause or something, and the delays, even if they say 15 days, it never comes before 45, 50 days.
Okay, but you can always reserve your right, madam. So whenever you are receiving a payment, so whenever they are making delayed payments, so you just do not accept their payments, but you write a mail protesting that we have received this much of amount which only relates to the principal, hence you have delayed this amount of days has been delayed. We are also entitled to receive this much of amount applicable as per the MSMED Act. And if it is being delayed by the PSUs, I would advise you not to leave that at all, because PSUs cannot deny, because they are government instrumentalities and government have made this act for you, right? So when you approach MSEFC and you have proved that the payment is delayed, then they will be asked to make the payments relating to the interest, applicable interest. So always be careful of your interest and reserving your rights.
चेतन जी, आप अपना क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते हैं सर से.
Hello, Chetan. Hello, Chetan, I guess you're mute.
आयुष अग्रवाल जी, आप क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते हैं सर से.
Hello, Ayush. Hello, Ayush.
Hello. Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. I can hear you fine, Ayush.
Yes. My question is this: many times, what happens if we deliver the material to any PSU, government PSUs? I am asking.
Yeah.
I am especially for the government PSUs.
Sure.
If suppose I have delivered the material on time and before time, right? But many times, what happened? They are delaying in generating the GRN. Sometimes, or you can say CRAC, right? Until unless.
So what is this GRN and CRAC? If you could.
It's a GRN is basically the goods receipt note, right?
Okay. Got it.
Right. Until unless it will not be generate the delivery time, or you can the payment terms will not be accepted, right?
Started, yeah, exactly.
Started, right? So many times what happened, but once if I have delivered the material and I am having the receiving for it, it means that my payment date will be started from that. If suppose the payment for 3 days, but what they are saying that it will be only calculated once the GRN will be generated.
No, so they are wrong. They are wrong, Ayush. They are entirely wrong in law and even in equity.
We know very well that they are wrong. But what action we can take for it, so that my client will also be right? Yeah, please.
Sure, Ayush. I completely understand your concern, and the only recourse I would advise you to have is to write a very strong worded notice to these PSUs who are saying these things to you, that until and unless we give you the acknowledgement, your payment terms would not be started. And it is very wrong to say, and it is in fact playing fraud on their part. So send them a very strong worded notice saying that you'll approach the court, you'll file a writ petition if they have said this to you in any written communication, then they are doomed. They cannot do so. And if they have done so, then you can approach the courts, and the courts would give them a really hard time, because they're making a fool out of the MSMEs, because a lot of MSMEs do not know of these laws, and because it would be very much convenient for them, right, to not issue the GRN or the receiving for let's say 2 months, because they just don't want the payment terms to get started. So it cannot function like that, Ayush. And you just sent a strong worded notice. Also reserve your rights that whatever delay that has happened from their end in generating the receivings does not matter to you, is immaterial to your case, and you would calculate the payment term as per the receiving that you have received after the goods were delivered to them. So that is the date you are going to rely upon, and you have to communicate it to them very much clearly and concisely that this is the case, boss, and we have reserved the right to claim this much of applicable interest just because you delayed this much of amount in generating the receivings. So this is my advice to you.
Yeah, one more thing. One of the material I have supplied to the government, to some petro refinery through an EPC company, right?
Okay.
Right. Now the thing is, happened that petro refinery have hold the payment of the EPC, right? Okay. And from the Feb till October, means approximate 8 months have been completed. They have hold our payment, that EPC company. And what EPC company is saying that until unless they will not receive the payment from petro refinery, they are not in the position to release our payment. So in that particular case, do we have to take some legal action?
I've seen these cases also, Ayush. So a lot of time when there is subcontractors hired by contractors who are entering into a contract with, let's say government instrumentality, and they often breach their obligation, and just because they have breached their obligation, the payments to all the other subcontractors get stuck. So this is the issue, right? Hello.
Yes.
So yeah, this is the issue, right? If I've understood right, I'm just checking if I understood right.
Yes.
Yeah. So if this is the issue, what we do generally is, whenever there is a contract with the PSUs, you would see in their agreements, they're generally very big and huge agreements. And in those agreements, it is always there. I've seen a lot of agreements, and I've always seen this clause that whenever a payment to a subcontractor is delayed just because of a breach of the contractor in between, the subcontractor can write to the PSU directly. You can make a representation to PSU directly stating that you have provided this much of services to the contractor, which is in turn the party to the contract to the government against the government contract, and you have not received the payment from the contractor just because the contractor has breached in its obligation. And I have seen PSUs going out of their ways and making the payment directly to the subcontractor from the account of contractor. So I've seen this happen.
Okay.
Yeah, it is not like it is alien. I've seen this happening. What they do is they directly make payment to you, and they conciliate it with the contractor, or they settle it with the contractor at a later stage. But at the instant, if they are agreed that you have provided them with the services and goods and this much amount is due to you, they will make the payment directly to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ayush ji,
you will have to make a good representation. That's all.
Yes.
Thank you.
जैन जी, आप अपना क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते हैं सर से।
Hello.
Hello, Jayant.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि मैंने MSME का रजिस्ट्रेशन मेरे वर्क ऑर्डर डेट के बाद में 4-5 महीना के बाद में किया.
Okay.
Then I raise my dispute with MSME for delayed payment.
हाँ जी, बताइए. तो एक्सेप्ट नहीं हुआ.
वर्क ऑर्डर का डेट है, उससे 4-5 महीने के बाद में मैंने MSME का रजिस्ट्रेशन किया।
ओके ओके।
एज MSME सर्विस प्रोवाइडर इन कंस्ट्रक्शन।
ठीक है।
क्लाइंट बोलते हैं कि ये केस देव रेज्ड विथ MSME के ये रजिस्ट्रेशन लेट किया है, वर्क ऑर्डर पहले का डेट का है, ये लेना, ये केस चलाना नहीं चाहिए MSME में, ये वो लोग कोर्ट में जावे, सिविल कोर्ट में।
Jayant sir, I would unfortunately that is the law. So ये क्यों है? क्योंकि अगर आप रजिस्टर ही नहीं थे MSME में और आप वर्क ऑर्डर इशू किए किसी को, तो आप जब वर्क ऑर्डर इशू किए तब तो आप MSME नहीं थे। आप 5 महीने बाद अगर आप MSME बनते हैं तो उसके बाद से जो आप वर्क ऑर्डर रजिस्ट्रेशन के बाद से जो वर्क ऑर्डर साइन करते हैं उसके लिए आप MSEFC जा सकते हैं, उससे पहले के लिए आप
एग्रीमेंट तो ये एक ही रहता है ना साहब?
अच्छा, आप बोल रहे हैं अग्रीमेंट, मैं समझ नहीं रहा हूँ। आपने बोला कि
एग्रीमेंट का डेट, समझो मेरा काम 5 करोड़ का है
जी,
वो चलने वाला है 18 महीना
जी,
और मैंने वर्क ऑर्डर एग्रीमेंट एक्सेप्ट किया, उसके 4-5 महीने के बाद में मैंने MSME का रजिस्ट्रेशन किया।
ओके।
तो अभी वो लोग बोलते हैं कि ये एग्रीमेंट के अंडर में जो भी काम हुआ वो MSME को ज्यूरिस्डिक्शन नहीं है आगे काम चलाने का।
नहीं, ऐसा नहीं है। जो वर्क ऑर्डर आपने रेज किए हैं रजिस्ट्रेशन के बाद उसके लिए है ज्यूरिस्डिक्शन, बट जो वर्क ऑर्डर आपके रजिस्ट्रेशन के पहले के हैं उसके लिए ज्यूरिस्डिक्शन नहीं।
वर्क ऑर्डर रजिस्ट्रेशन के पहले 4-5 महीने का है,
तो
एग्रीमेंट भी साइन किया वो भी 4-5 महीने के बाद पहले किया।
अच्छा, तो सर अनफॉर्चुनेटली MSME का ज्यूरिस्डिक्शन इसमें सच में नहीं आएगा, क्योंकि आप MSME थे नहीं जब आप एग्रीमेंट कर रहे थे।
हाँ।
तो आप इसमें क्या कर सकते हैं कि आप अगर रेफरेंस कर दिए हैं तो कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, उनको कोर्ट जाने दीजिए। वो कोर्ट में अगर वो सक्सेसफुल भी आते हैं तो कोई दिक्कत नहीं है। कोर्ट वुड ऑलवेज गिव यू द लिबर्टी टू फाइंड योर रिकोर्स एल्सवेयर इफ नॉट MSEFC। तो आई वुड आस्क यू कि ये कितने का डिस्प्यूट है सर?
डिस्प्यूट है करीबन 1.65 करोड़ रुपीस का।
तो सर आपके लिए बेस्ट है इंसॉल्वेंसी। यू जस्ट गो इंसॉल्वेंसी एंड बैंक्रप्सी कोड सर। इंसॉल्वेंसी एंड बैंक्रप्सी कोड एक बहुत ही ज्यादा स्ट्रॉन्ग ट्विस्टिंग वे है जिसमें आप दूसरे पार्टी को बोलते हैं कि आप पैसा दे दो, अगर आप नहीं दे पाते हो पैसा तो आपका मैनेजमेंट चला जाता है, मतलब कि उनकी कंपनी उनके हाथ से चली जाएगी।
तो ये MSME will not be able to take up my petition.
No sir, even if you have made the reference, I guess even if it gets accepted, the other party if they approach court, अगर वो कोर्ट पहुंच जाते हैं ये बोल के कि MSME का जुरिस्डिक्शन नहीं है, तो कोर्ट्स ने अपने डिसीजन में ये डिसाइड किया हुआ है स्पेसिफिक इशू कि आपका रजिस्ट्रेशन बाद का है और आपका कॉन्ट्रैक्ट उससे पहले का है, तो आप MSEFC में जा पाएंगे या नहीं। तो कोर्ट ने बोला था कि नहीं, आप नहीं जा पाएंगे, आपको बेनिफिट नहीं मिलेगा MSEFC का, क्योंकि आपने अग्रीमेंट पहले किया है, रजिस्ट्रेशन बाद में लिया। तो ये केस ऑलरेडी डिसाइडेड है, तो ये सेटल्ड लॉ है और इसमें कोई दो राय नहीं है सर। तो बेसिकली आपका MSEFC का रजिस्ट्रेशन मतलब कि जुरिस्डिक्शन नहीं होता है, बट देन IBC इज इक्वली अ वेरी फीजिबल वे आपका रिकोर्स करने के लिए। आप अगर इसमें डिमांड नोटिस सेंड कर देते हैं दूसरे क्लाइंट को, तो 10 दिन में उनको या तो डिस्प्यूट बताना होगा कि एक डिस्प्यूट एग्जिस्ट करता है पहले से हमारा, या फिर उनको ये बताना होगा कि हमने पेमेंट कर दिया है। तो अगर उन्होंने पेमेंट नहीं किया है 10 दिन के बाद अगर वो लोग पेमेंट नहीं करते हैं तो आप सीधा एप्लीकेशन डालते हैं नेशनल कंपनी लॉ ट्रिब्यूनल में, और उसके बाद नेशनल कंपनी लॉ ट्रिब्यूनल देखती है कि इनके मैनेजमेंट को हटा देना चाहिए या नहीं, क्योंकि जो कंपनी का मैनेजमेंट अपने ड्यूज पे नहीं कर पा रहा है तो IBC में उनको हटा दिया जाता है। उनके हाँ IBC इंसॉल्वेंसी बैंक्रप्सी कोड।
अच्छा, लेकिन तब अगर कोऑपरेटिव सोसाइटी रहा तो?
अच्छा, आप कोऑपरेटिव सोसाइटी हैं सर?
नहीं, माय इंडिविजुअल प्रोप्राइटर हूँ, मेरे क्लाइंट कोऑपरेटिव सोसाइटी है जिसका एग्रीमेंट एमएसएमई रजिस्ट्रेशन के पहले हुआ है।
अच्छा, अगर वो कोऑपरेटिव सोसाइटी है तो कोऑपरेटिव सोसाइटी है तो मुझको एक बार चेक करना पड़ेगा सर, क्योंकि एलएलपी और कॉर्पोरेशंस के अगेंस्ट आईबीसी जनरली लाई करता है। आई एम नॉट श्योर कि वो सोसाइटी के अगेंस्ट लाई करता है या नहीं, आई गेस वो नहीं करता है। आई विल हैव टू चेक अ बिट कि मैं श्योर हो पाऊं इस चीज के लिए। लेकिन जहां तक मुझको पता है सर, जहां तक मैंने काम किया है अभी तक के एक्सपीरियंस में, वो कोऑपरेटिव सोसाइटी के अगेंस्ट तो लाई नहीं करना चाहिए। तो आपके पास अभी भी रिकोर्स है सर, जो नॉर्मल सिविल सूट्स होते हैं या फिर समरी जजमेंट्स होते हैं, समरी सूट्स होते हैं।
लेकिन अभी
तो
वो टाइम बार हो जाएगा।
कितने साल पुराना हो गया सर आपका ये?
ये 3 साल के ऊपर हो गया है।
अच्छा अच्छा, ओके।
एमएसएमई में 3 साल के ऊपर हो गया है। ड्यू टू कोरोना वो केस अब वो लोग चला नहीं पाए।
अच्छा अच्छा, तो कोई बात नहीं सर, 3 साल से अगर वो हो गया है तो 1 साल का तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट का ही एग्जेम्पशन दिया हुआ है। तो मुझको नहीं पता है कि आपने वो 1 साल जोड़ा है या नहीं। 2021 लिमिटेशन में कंप्यूट नहीं होगा, पूरा 2020 से 2021 1 साल।
अच्छा
तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने उसको लिमिटेशन कंप्यूट करने से एक्सक्लूड कर दिया है, वो कोविड
अच्छा
वाला टाइम। तो वो 1 साल आपका उधर ऐसे ही बच गया सर। और अगर बीच में कोई एक्नॉलेजमेंट आता है उनसे, अगर उनसे कोई बात हुई है जहां पे वो लोग बोले हैं कि हाँ इतना अमाउंट ड्यू होता है हमारा, इतना अमाउंट ड्यू है हमसे, तो उस दिन से 3 साल होना चाहिए। जिस दिन लास्ट दिन अगर उनसे कोई बात हुई है, एक्नॉलेजमेंट आया है या फिर कोई पेमेंट आई थी, तो उस दिन से 3 साल होना चाहिए सर, उसके बाद से 3 साल।
ओके सर, थैंक यू।
You can approach Udyamita helpline. You can approach Risha Bharadwaj if you want to, sir, send this,
जैन सर, मैं आपसे
resolve this
रिक्वेस्ट
in better
करूंगी
manner.
कि आफ्टर वेबिनार हमारी टीम आपसे कनेक्ट कर लेगी। एंड सर मैं लास्ट अटेंडेंस को
Sure.
यस, आयुष
Hi
अग्रवाल।
Ayush. Hello Ayush. Hi Ayush. You are mute.
हेलो।
Hello. Oh, sorry.
हेलो, हाय आशीष जी, आप अपना क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते हैं सर से।
Hello Ashish.
सर आई थिंक बहुत ज्यादा टाइम हो गया है। इश्तिया या सर, एक्चुअली टाइम भी बहुत ज्यादा हो गया है, तो काफी
Sure,
अटेंडेंस
sure.
लेफ्ट कर चुके हैं। तो सर मैं आपसे रिक्वेस्ट करना चाहूंगी कि आज का वेबिनार हम यहीं पर एंड करते
Sure,
हैं।
sure.
एंड थैंक यू सो मच सर, आज का वेबिनार
Thank you.
काफी इंफॉर्मेटिव था और काफी लंबा भी था आज का वेबिनार।
Thank you. Yeah.
सर उम्मीद करूंगी नेक्स्ट टाइम फिर से हम नए टॉपिक पर वेबिनार करें। तो आज के लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर।
थैंक यू, थैंक यू। मैं कुछ चीजें ऐड करने लग गया था पिछले से, तो वो और लंबा खींच गया। आई एम रियली वेरी सॉरी।
कोई नहीं सर। सर थैंक यू सो मच।
थैंक यू सो मच। थैंक यू, थैंक यू एवरीवन। थैंक यू।
मैं सभी पार्टिसिपेंट्स को बताना चाहूंगी कि अगर आपको कोई भी क्वेश्चन है रिलेटेड टू वेबिनार या फिर एमएसएमई की स्कीम्स के बारे में जानना है, तो आप उद्यमिता हेल्पलाइन से जुड़ सकते हैं और यहाँ पर कॉन्टेक्ट डिटेल्स भी मेंशन है चैट बॉक्स में। तो जल्द ही हमारी टीम भी आपको कनेक्ट करेगी। एंड उद्यमिता हेल्पलाइन की आप मेंबरशिप लीजिए और उद्यमिता हेल्पलाइन के साथ जुड़िए और आप अपने बिजनेस को ग्रो कीजिए। अगर आपके बिजनेस में कोई भी प्रॉब्लम आती है, हैंड होल्डिंग के लिए उद्यमिता हेल्पलाइन आपको 24/7 आपको हेल्प करेगा। एंड अगर आपकी डिलेड पेमेंट या फिर एमएसएमई की स्कीम्स के बारे में जानना है तो उद्यमिता हेल्पलाइन से आप जुड़ सकते हैं। तो आज का वेबिनार काफी अच्छा रहा। रेणुका जी, यस मैम, आपको रिकॉर्डिंग मिल जाएगी इसकी। एंड सभी पार्टिसिपेंट से मैं बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद करूंगी कि आज का वेबिनार आप लोगों के बिना और हमारे एक्सपर्ट के बिना बिल्कुल भी इंटरेस्टिंग नहीं होता। तो थैंक यू सो मच एवरीवन, थैंक यू सो मच।